Hello, folks. You're listening to episode 20 of your favorite sports betting podcast, A Mug's Game. And here is your host, Smeg. That's right, everybody. We're back after a long hiatus since the Australian Open was the last time we had a podcast. And it's a bit of a milestone episode, the 20th episode. Since myself and my friend, actually Ronnie, we had an idea at a stag party there a few years ago that we should start our own sports betting podcast, and it's worked out pretty well since then. Ronnie hasn't done one with me for a while, but the good news is Ronnie will be back in a week's time to do a preview of the European Championship. So we'll be very excited to have Ronnie back for that. But for the moment, we're going to concentrate, of course, on the French Open. Very excited again. It's going to be a very interesting French Open, of course, with Rafa chasing history in the men's. And let's see if Iga Swiatek, if I pronounce it right, can go back to back in the French Open. But there's a lot of potential great stories, but we'll go through that soon enough. I have to say, from a betting point of view, I'm not as excited about this podcast as I have been in other podcasts, mostly because I didn't like the draw from a match betting point of view, and then when I saw the odds, it's just a little bit harder to find value this time around than it has been before. So in a way, when I saw the draw, it's like, okay, it's a good thing that Wimbledon's coming around the corner, and that we have another main draw to look forward to soon enough. Because the draw was a bit of a stinker in my view. But anyway, we did our research, we did our analysis, and we've come up with a few bets, I think. Paddy Power obliged us with some decent prices in the quarter betting. So that's what we're going to focus on for the moment, is the quarter betting. And I have my notes here, so you'll hear them. You might hear pages being ruffled, but that's just the way it is. Okay, so we're just going to look at quarter one. In the men's quarter, we're going to look at quarter one. And Djokovic is at 4-9 with Sky Bet is the best price I could find. Maybe there is a 1-2 out there with some bookie, but the best one I could find was with Sky Bet. And if you just look at his draw going forward, he's got Tennis Sandgren, who has not been in great form at the moment, so he should be well able to take care of him in the first round. Probably a matchup with Pablo Cuevas, old man Pablo Cuevas, who is a shadow of his former self. He should be well able to take care of Cuevas, who is, who was a fantastic player on the dirt, but just as past his best at the moment. And then the likely toughest third round opponent is Humbert from France. Very good on fast surfaces. Really seems to hate the clay. Shouldn't be any problem he might not even make the third round, but shouldn't be any problem for Novak. And then there's a possibility of Goffin, Musetti, and I think the most likely person to be in the fourth round, it would be a rematch against a fella who bet him, the Italian Marco Cecchinato, I think it's how you pronounce it. And he bet him in the quarterfinal there a few years back. I remember it was a really epic fourth set tiebreak between those two, and Cecchinato was in the form of his life back then. But he's recently made the final in Parma there recently. Today, I think he beat Munar in the semi-final, and he's back in very good form. So he would be a tough opponent, but I think Novak is in a better place now than he was. He was, at that time, he was back struggling to get back to his very best. And I don't even think Cecchinato is playing at that level either. And then the worst case scenario probably is, a worst case scenario is an informed Federer, which seems very unlikely given how Federer has had so little match practice, and also had a recent loss to Pablo Andujar. It seems to me quite unlikely that Federer will be in that quarterfinal. Berrettini then obviously is a good clay courter. Recently made the final of, I think it was Madrid, or it was one of the main Masters finals now, that he made the final of, and so he's obviously a good player, and but at the same time, is it not the type of player you'd worry about for Novak if he was to, if you're a big Novak fan, in a quarterfinal. Novak should have too much for someone like Berrettini. especially in that backhand to backhand battle. Berrettini's backhand, he's got a good backhand slice, but his backhand maybe is a little bit less exposed on the clay when he's a bit more time, but he does have a weak backhand, and Novak should take advantage of that. So personally, I don't see anyone here to beat Novak, and I just can't see any scenario where he doesn't get to the semi-final here unless he gets injured. I do actually like the 4-9. I actually do think it's a bit of value there, but generally speaking, I don't like backing single bets that are shorter than 4-6 or 1.67 for people who use decimal odds. So usually in the past, what I have often done is I've had a lot of success actually pairing him up with Rafa Nadal to win his other quarter. That's come in for us. If you've been listening to our podcast, that bet has been a banker bet for many years. And Rafa is obviously, of course, he's in Roland Garros, he's on the clay, and he is in the second quarter, so we're going to have a potential semi-final, which is a bit of a pity because I would have loved to see another final between Djokovic and Nadal, and it's a pity that if they do play each other again, it would be in the semi-final. But if we look at Nadal here, he's 1-4 with Sky Bet. I think that's the best price I could see on him to win his quarter. And if we look at his run, he's got Popyran, which isn't the nicest first round. Popyran could, it's not that Nadal should take care of him fairly handily, but I just think Nadal would want to sort of be at least on his B game so that he doesn't extend much energy there, because Popyran is a good player, even on the dirt, probably better suited to faster surfaces, but it's not the easiest first round opponent. And then it's either Gasquet or Gaston. Of course, Gaston, we all remember, reached the quarterfinals last year. He beat Dominic Thiem. I beat Stan Wawrinka and Dominic. Oh no, he lost. No, he reached the fourth round last year. So he beat Stan Wawrinka. I remember he beat Nishioka, and he pushed Dominic Thiem to 5 sets, and then Dominic Thiem was goosed for the quarterfinal against Diego Schwartzman. And so it could be Gaston. He hasn't really pushed on since there, but look, his run in Roland Garros last year came out of nowhere. If it's Gasquet, look, Gasquet's way past his best, and in any case, Nadal has always owned Gasquet over the years. I remember Gasquet, there was that famous video of Gasquet playing tennis against Nadal when they were both about 12 years old, or maybe even younger, I think. And Gasquet won it, and then Gasquet was quoted saying, when I see that video, I just still can't believe it's me that bet Rafa. Which is funny. I'm a big fan of Gasquet, from a tennis point of view. His backhand, for me personally, especially that one hand down the line, is the most beautiful shot in tennis, bar none. Better than Federer's forehand, more beautiful, not better of course, but more beautiful. It's just when he unleashes on that backhand down the line with that short backswing, it's just a beautiful sight. But yeah, his career is certainly he's on the way out. Let's put it that way. Then the potential tough third round matchup against Sonego, who's in fantastic form. Who reached the semi-finals of Rome, knocking out the likes of Rublev and Dominic Thiem to get there. So he's in fantastic form. I think he won a tournament in Italy as well. It was Cagliari, maybe it was Cagliari, I think maybe. But yeah, look, he's and he also had a very good run, I think, to the fourth round of the French last year. So he's a tough one to get in the third round if it goes that way. But once again, Rafa is a level above. Rafa shouldn't have any problems there. Then it gets a little bit tricky with potentially Jannik Sinner. Now, he played Jannik Sinner in the quarterfinals last year, and Sinner actually served for the first set. I think that's not the easiest. It's not the easiest it's not the easiest fourth round at all. Now, he has played Sinner since and beat him comfortably in straight sets. I think it was in Rome, and I think he might have played him another time. So he has took care of business against Sinner since then, and he obviously took care of business fairly handily in the end last year. But it's just one of those things where it's a tricky fourth round match. Like Sinner, if he really red lines and plays his top stuff, and if by any chance Rafa's not quite at his very best, there's a slim chance of an upset. And then of course it possibly could be Rublev in the quarterfinals, more likely Rublev, or maybe Diego Schwartzman if he kind of reignites the fire that he had under his in his belly last year. He hasn't been in as good a form, even though he took a title, I think, in Argentina earlier on in the South American clay court swing. But he hasn't quite been at that form this year. So it's one of those ones where I don't really like the 1-4 on the basis as if I look at the 4-9 and Djokovic, you're just kind of going, there's no one really here to threaten Djokovic, really. Like, you can't say Federer. It'll be a shock if Federer comes in great form, and Berrettini's the best other player, and Djokovic should have too much. But Rafa's a shorter price, and of course, like, you know, you wouldn't, like, of course he should be a big favourite to get to the semi-final, but I'm just a little worried because Rublev did beat him in Madrid, I think. I might be getting my tournaments mixed up because, to be honest with you, with all these matches like that takes part, some of the information that I am relaying to you, I am relaying from my memory, and I might get some of that stuff wrong, but I think for the most part it will be right. So just the fact that we have a Sonego, Sinner, Rublev, 3 matches in a row at 1-4, I just can't. I can't be recommending that, okay? Because, you know, at the end of the day, even though Rafa has won 2 titles, he won Barcelona, he won Rome, he didn't do it as comprehensively as we've seen him do it in the past. You know, he really was pushed in a lot of those matches. He was really pushed. You know, Tsitsipas, of course, had match points against him. And of course, Shapovalov, I think, had match points against him in Rome. So he has been pushed. He hasn't quite been at his very, very best. And with every year that goes by, these kind of 1-4s on Rafa, even if it is in the French Open, it's just, even though, of course, he's the most likely person to get through that quarter, but I just don't see value in backing that. And so I'm going to leave out the usual banker of Novak and Rafa, which would have been about at a 4 to 5 price for both of them to win their quarters. And I'm just going to have to, unfortunately, have no bets on any of those, because if you look, there are good players in that quarter. There's Rublev, there's Karatsev, of course, and Sinner, Diego Schwartzman. I forgot about mentioning those players. And so there's a lot of great players in there, but you couldn't really be backing any of them because a lot of them have to play each other, of course. Sinner would have to play Nadal in the 4th round, and then obviously Rublev would have to play Karatsev or Schwartzman before he got to Nadal. So their prices at 9, 10, 11 to 1. So there's nothing really that stands out in that quarter. So I'm going to just skip on, and if I don't have a bet, but we just no harm going through the quarters anyway. So yes, the prediction is Nadal to get through the quarterfinals, but no to the price of 1-4. And of course, regarding the 3rd quarter, now this is an interesting quarter, the 3rd quarter, where we have it's a little bit more open, really. And we have Dominic Thiem is the favourite at 7-4, and Zverev is touching around 2-1, and then Casper Ruud is around 13-2 with Paddy Power. Now, earlier this morning we did nab, Paddy Power made a bit of a mistake. We did nab the 40-1 on Casper Ruud Casper Ruud to win the quarter. Big mistake. If we look at he's got 2 easy enough first rounds, and then of course he would have to get through Hurkacz in the 3rd round, who isn't a great clay courter. Casper Ruud, of course, is off the back of a clay court title in this recently, and where he beat Shapovalov in the final. And so yes, so I have to say that I'm very happy with the 41. Of course, then he'd probably have to get through Thiem, and then through or Thiem or Zverev, and there's Bautista Good isn't there. So once you got to the 4th round, it would be more difficult. But we're happy enough with the 40-1 that we got on Casper Ruud at the moment. Karen Khachanov was at 100-1 with Paddy Power earlier on today. We got on to that, but unfortunately he's down to 40-1 with Paddy Power, and he's 20-1 with Sky Bet. So I can't be suggesting that. Martin Fuchsovich is another one that was at 100-1 where we nibbled that, but once again, it's his price has plummeted. So no point in me recommending prices to you on the podcast when they're already gone. So look, it's just kind of a strange one to obviously Zverev, champion at Madrid. Great run there. And yeah, so I suppose the thing. Oh yeah, so I think that's where it's just at 2-1. Let's see excuse me. Let's see what Zverev's run is like. He's got qualifier Ate in the first round, Taberner possibly in the second round, who came through qualifying very, very convincingly. Then maybe Dan Evans in the third round, and then it'd probably be Kachanov, Fuchsovich or Bautista Agut, and then Ruud or Thiem. Now at 2-1, could you really be backing him there? Of course, you'd expect him to get the first 3 rounds. Probably, of course, the 4th round Kachanov for Bautista Agut, but then Casper Ruud, or if you see, the thing is, for that to be value, you're banking on Thiem not to catch fire, because if Thiem catches fire at the French Open and finally regains his best form, you'd always be fancying Thiem against Zverev. So and then Casper Ruud would be tough opponent for him as well, and so it's hard to see value in that. If I'm going to be completely honest, I would consider they haven't seen the Bet365 prices yet where they put up to get to the quarterfinal. There might be a decent bet if he's anyway odds against to do that. I'd be very, very comfortable backing him to do that, but we'll have to wait and see what the prices are. So just keep that in mind, because I do think that he just will have the beating of. He's become that bit more reliable in these slam events. Of late, we got the final of the US Open. Ran out of steam a little bit at the French Open a couple of weeks later when he lost to Sinner, but of course reached the quarterfinals again at the Australian Open and really had a very tough match with Djokovic. So, in my opinion, in some ways he is the most likely. He is more likely than Thiem, because there's a little bit less question marks on regarding Zverev than there is regarding Thiem. Zverev has just recently won a title. Thiem has been open, has been quoted and very open that he's had a letdown. He's had an emotional letdown after winning his first Grand Slam last year, and he's found it hard to get back to full motivation. So there is a lot those sort of question marks over Thiem. While with Zverev, it's hard. It doesn't seem to be that way, and so I don't hate the 2-1 on Zverev actually to win that quarter at all. I do ultimately fancy him against anybody he's going to be playing up until the quarterfinals. And look, there could be covering opportunities against Thiem if it is Thiem, and if it's not, I'd let it ride against any of the other players, even if it's Casper Ruud, and we already have Casper Ruud at 40-1. Of course, you won't, but there you go. So once again, it can't really be tipping up anything there. Let's have a look at the 4th quarter. And this is my first bet is the 4th quarter, where we're looking at none other than Stefanos Tsitsipas to win that quarter. Now he's got a tricky enough first round opponent with Jeremy Chardy, but Chardy, look, Tsitsipas has just been he's been incredible. He over the clay court swing. He had those match. He's won his title. He's had those match points against Nadal in Barcelona and really played an incredible match there. He's just looked absolutely fantastic. I think he's won 2 titles in the clay court season actually. He's got Chardy, and then he's got Korda, who's actually played some great stuff, and I think got to the final of Parma against. He's going to be facing Marco Cecchinato tomorrow, and then possibly Isner in the 3rd round. Karina Busta is the most likely toughest opponent in the 4th round, and Medvedev will be as the number 2 seed is the most likely opponent in the I wouldn't even necessarily say the most likely opponent in the quarterfinals, but it's a very different story on the clay. Just Tsitsipas has just been, he's mentally. He has improved so much, and he's just so hungry. He's so hungry to win. He generally takes care of the players he's supposed to beat now. Obviously, he bet Nadal at the Australian Open. That was a big breakthrough for him. And then the matchup on the faster courts against Medvedev isn't great, but this is a different story on clay. We don't even know if Medvedev's going to get there. And I just have to say, and then of course he took Novak to 5 sets last year at the French Open. So in the form that he is in, and with that, those potential matchups, like, I think he's just a step above those guys now. Like, the way he moves so well, and the surface suits him. Suits him. I always think that his backhand is his weaker stroke, but he has a little bit more time to, first of all, to run around it and hit more forehands on the clay. But he also has little bit more time to line it up on the clay, which is also suited players like, of course, Thiem and Stan Wawrinka over the years and stuff like that as well too. But so overall, you'd have to say, to me, he's evens with Paddy Power. I just think that's a great price, and I'm very willing to suggest 3 points on Stefanos Tsitsipas to win his quarter, the fourth quarter of the men's draw in the French Open. So we're going to leave the quarter betting there. Obviously, I'll just have a quick look at Medvedev. Medvedev is a tough first round match against Bublik, who's a tricky opponent. Although I'm kind of surprised that Medvedev isn't shorter. He's gone about 1-2 there, and I was actually hoping that it might be something like maybe 3-10, and that I could maybe back the overs in that match. But I'm actually going to leave it now. Tommy Paul in the second round, tough matchup, tough second round match in clay. Then it could be Opelka, who we know has actually played some good stuff on the dirt. This Opelka or Erminar, maybe Garin in the fourth round. Well, I don't fear Garin at all, but yeah, so that's how it is. Medvedev actually doesn't have a bad draw at all, and maybe this is the year that he finally does actually make that run in Roland Garros. If he really is looking great, he could potentially cover against Tsitsipas. But I just think Tsitsipas on the clay is a step above at the moment, and really has to be backed at evens with Powers. Now, let's have a look at the women's French Open draw. And we're going to just look at the quarters here. First quarter, of course, we got the number 1 seed. Ash Barty is 7-4 as the best price you can get on Ash Barty to win that quarter. She's got Pera, maybe Lynette in the next round, Jabeur in the third round, Coco Gauff, who's off the back of a title herself. Recently, or maybe Jennifer Brady, but possibly most likely Coco Gauff, because she's playing some great stuff. And then maybe Muchkova or Pliskova. Look, I think Barty is obviously has to be respected a lot. Considering her, she had the last time she played in the French Open, she won, although she benefited from a very, very easy draw. It opened up, like, to have to play Anisimova and Vondrousova, who basically kind of choked the final. And of course, Barty deserves credit in that final for how confidently she took Vondrousova apart too. But I still think there are question marks. And even though Barty has she's played all the big players, and she's beat all the big players, I still think there's question marks over her at Grand Slams, because apart from that one run where the draw completely opened up for her at the French Open, like, she lost to Alison Risk a few weeks later at Wimbledon, and you would think the grass would be a more suitable surface. She's lost to the likes of she lost to Muchkova in the quarterfinals of the Australian Open last year, which actually was one of the reasons why, when we only tipped her up to win or to reach the quarterfinals last year, because we did see I think that she was something like 5-6 to reach the quarterfinals, and she was only like 6-5 to win the quarterfinals. And there were other quality players like Muchkova, like Mertens, that possibly could have beat her in the quarterfinals, and it did kind of worked out for us on that occasion. So look, this is an interesting one where I don't see 13-8 as value, because Jabeur is obviously a potentially tricky customer there. Coco Gauff is playing great stuff, and I don't think Coco Gauff would be that bothered by Barty's sort of crafty game necessarily, because Coco moves so well. She's not afraid to work against slice and stuff like that. And then of course potentially Muchkova in that quarterfinal, who we know has beaten her at the quarterfinal of the Australian Open. And one thing that was very noticeable about that match, now I think Barty kind of blew it in a way, but one thing was really noticeable was that Muchkova was winning a lot of the kind of the slice backhands, and she was actually kind of winning the last two sets of the match. She was kind of winning those cat and mouse exchanges, but who's to say Muchkova will be there, will even be getting there. But the two prices that I looked at here that I thought were just a little bit too big were Sloane Stephens. I know we've mentioned in the past she actually has at 150 to 1 reached the final there a few years back against Simona Halep for us in our very first podcast. Actually, I think was that French Open, and Sloane got to the final for us at 150 to 1 that time. Look, Sloane has been sort of AWOL for much, and generally goes AWOL all the time. Like, it's not just this year. Like, it's she's the most hot and cold player you will find out there. She's certainly more cold than she is hot most of the time. But she does have a great record at French Open. Like, they obviously didn't do well last year, but she was in terrible form coming into it last year. But she reached the quarterfinals the year before. I remember her beating Muguruza. She had a pretty disappointing loss in the quarterfinals to Konta, a very surprising loss. Konta just served out of her skin that day and just didn't give Stephens any rhythm. But she reached the final before. She's obviously a Grand Slam champion, so the thing about Stephens is, if you just look at Stephens, she's got Carlos Suarez Navarro, who's just back. Great to see Carlos Suarez Navarro back after she had a very tough time with cancer, and just great to see her back playing. Like, that's such a great sign. I don't know if it's going to be her last time ever playing Roland Garros, but she was another beautiful player to watch. That very cultured one-handed backhand, which is so rare in the women's game. It's great to see, but. Yeah, look, it's Carlos Suarez Navarro, and then she could potentially play Pliskova in the second round. They've had some battles. I think Pliskova has won a few more matches than Stephens, but they've always had some close battles. And I don't really, even though Pliskova did have a run to the Rome final and got hammered then she had kind of benefited from the draw opening up a bit, and she got hammered then by Swiatek in the final. I still don't fancy her that much on the clay. She's always there to be upset, and I think Sloane, if Sloane finds her step on clay, she and managed to beat Pliskova there. She really and works her way into the tournament. That's when Sloane is very, very dangerous. And at 80 to 1, then it could be a potential turnaround, most likely with Muchkova. The thing about it is with Paddy Power, Muchkova is 40 to 1 and Sloane is 80 to 1. So if you back both players and you just hope, first of all, Muchkova, if she gets to the third, Muchkova has a very good chance of getting the third round. As long as she's fit, she should get to the third round. I think she'd be well able to take care of Pliskova. She beat Pliskova comfortably in straight sets at the Australian Open, and I don't see any reason why the clay will give Pliskova a greater advantage, even though I do prefer Muchkova herself on faster surfaces. Of course, Muchkova has actually beaten Pliskova at Wimbledon as well, so she has Grand Slam wins against Pliskova. And if Sloane manages to find her best game, I think she can beat Pliskova, and then the two of them will be playing each other in the third round. And either way, you'd have one player either at 40 to 1 or at 80 to 1 in the fourth round. And so if I'm just going to have a look here at the potential fourth round matches there. And then the worst case scenario in the fourth round is Svitolina, and then the worst case scenario in the quarterfinals is Barty. Now, obviously, Svitolina, we've seen her before. She keeps flattering to deceive. Lost very tamely to Podoroska in the quarterfinals last year. She just doesn't seem to be able to get her game together on in the slam, so I wouldn't fear her as their fourth round opponent at all. And the other thing about both these players, because Muchkova is a reigning Grand Slam semi-finalist, and Sloane Stephens, once again, she's one of those players that when she's hot, all of a sudden bookies catch on, and very few people are willing to layer. Very few of the bookies are really willing to layer, which means that you would have coverable prices. You'd probably have coverable prices on either of them. Neither of them would be a dog. Neither of them would be a big dog against Svitolina if it is her, and probably if it's anyone else, they could even be favourite. And then, of course, you never know if it is Barty in the quarterfinals. Obviously, you just kind of have to cross your fingers and hope. But I wouldn't rule either of those players out against Barty. So at 40-1 and at 80-1, I'm going to suggest a half point each on Sloane Stephens and Karolina Muchkova. Of course, Krejcikova is 100-1 there. I wouldn't rule any. I wouldn't. She's just reached the final in Strasbourg, and she's a very solid clay court player. She actually I had it backed at 500-1 for Rome there a couple of weeks ago, and she had match points against the eventual champion Swiatek, which was pretty sickening, but that's just how it goes sometimes. So I wouldn't put anyone off her either. So there's our second two bets. There is at 2 half points on Sloane and on Karolina Muchkova. So yes, then we look at the fourth round, and we have or the third quarter, and we have Sophia Kenin. Is number 4 seed, and if you look at Sophia's draw, we have first round matchup against Ostapenko, and then we have potentially Blinkova, then Jessica Pegula, then Mertens or Sakari, and of course Swiatek is obviously the other top seed in that quarter. Now I'll just talk first of all about Swiatek. Swiatek has Juvan, who she should take care of pretty easily in the first round. Swiatek was incredible last year, going into the way she just demolished everybody in the field was so impressive. But there's going to be a lot of pressure on her. We've rarely seen it. I think this we'll learn a lot about Swiatek from this tournament. She's the favourite of the tournament. Last year she was 100-1. We actually had her backed at 100-1 last year. I only wish I had more on her, but. The problem is, it's a little bit of. I do think she's a champion. I really do think she's a champion in making, and I have a bet on her actually with Sky Bet at 11-4. That is that she will end up winning more than 5 slams or more. I think it was more than 5 slams. And I know I could be waiting a while for that, but I think that's like putting money into a savings account and getting almost 300% interest on the money, so because I just really believe that she's going to be a multiple Grand Slam champion. But this is there is a lot of pressure on her now. She very impressively won Rome this year, and I'd say possibly is worthy favourite, although she is very short. She's like 9-4 some places. That's very, very short. I know the field doesn't feel that strong. I was actually disappointed that Halep wasn't in the field, because Halep would have distorted the market a little bit, and I don't really fancy Halep anymore. I always find that Halep actually distorts the market a little bit, but so that you get better prices on other players. But in any case, Juvan, and then maybe Shelby Rogers in the second round. And if Shelby finds her game, that could be a tricky banana skin. Shelby has been to the quarterfinals of the French Open before. Then Kontaveit in the third round, who's a tricky opponent, but a type of player that doesn't really produce big results against top players at slams, and I'm not even sure she's going to be in there. Muguruza, a lot of question marks over her, but she could be a potential 4th round opponent. So, for example, with Muguruza, if we look at the prices here for this, this is actually, we're going to the second quarter here. With Muguruza, she's been out of action for a little while, and Swiatek is 10-11 to win this quarter, and the fact that she'll have to get through Muguruza, and who knows who the other player would be. It could be Mertens, it could be Ostapenko, and it could be the girl we're going to be talking about very soon, Sophia Kenin, and so. The problem I would say I'd have with that is, yes, I do think she's the most likely. I think Muguruza is coming in with question marks, but the problem is with Muguruza is, just in case she does find a bit of form, Muguruza does have the game to beat Swiatek. If anyone does, like we know with Muguruza, Muguruza had match points against Osaka at the Australian Open, and she was at the final of the Australian Open last year. She's a former champion here. at the French Open. Like, shows she can also play on the clay, and she's been to the semi-finals, of course, too. So, I'd shy away from backing that 10-11 on the basis that, first of all, you're just worried that Muguruza will find some form. Secondly, there's a lot of pressure on her. It's a lot of pressure on her, and we don't know enough about her yet. And my instincts is that she will be able to handle it, but it's just you can't. I'm just not sure enough to be advocating for a bet at 10-11. Now, I might change my mind on that. I might, because the draws just come out. I've got to have another day, but I might change my mind about that. But one bet I do like again is, and I know she hasn't been in the best form. She's obviously, she had a very poor loss to Kaya Kanepi in the Australian Open earlier in the year, and she hasn't really been playing much since then or winning much since then. But I can't turn down the 40-1 that Paddy Power are offering for Sofia Kenin, last year's finalist, to win this quarter. The reason being, Ostapenko, I think, once again, is a little bit overrated here. Ostapenko is actually considered to be the favourite against Kenin. And I don't know, it's Ostapenko, she one of, she's... I think we're reading too much into the fact she got to the quarterfinals at Rome and lost in the final set tiebreak. And I thought what I thought was a very erratic match against Pliskova, and so I like Ostapenko was actually in some places. I think you can get her at 20-1 to win that quarter. I mean, I don't hate it because I do think that this half of the quarter is a lot weaker. But you've Ostapenko in the first round. Now, if Kenin can get through Ostapenko, first of all, she got to the final of the French Open last year. She's no mug on the clay. And Ostapenko is the type of player I think Kenin can play well against if she finds her game. Then once she gets through Ostapenko, she'd have a very winnable second round match to give her even more confidence going into the tournament. And then Jessica Pegula, who obviously had a great run to the quarterfinals of the Australian Open and played some fantastic tennis there, but is relatively not say untested, but really hasn't proven anything on clay. She's never really done much on clay. Mertens or Sakari, once again, if Kenin managed to get to the fourth round, I know Mertens did beat Kenin at the US Open, but Kenin wasn't quite herself that time. I'd fancy Kenin against either of those players. And then, of course, if it is Swiatek in the quarterfinals, of course, Swiatek should be a big favourite there. But for me, 40-1, like we actually backed her to win a quarter last year at the French Open at 22-1. Obviously, this time Swiatek is in there, which actually makes it very tricky. But there's question marks over Swiatek, and I just think she's still a quality player. Like class is permanent. And she just should not be as big as 40-1. There is question marks, of course, about her form, about her fitness. Of course, all that stuff is relevant. But at 40-1, I just cannot resist a half point on Sofia Kenin, because if she managed to work her way into the tournament, I can see her going on a run, just like she went on a run to the final last year, just like she went on a run to winning the Australian Open. Like she still has the class, she still has the quality. So. I can't turn down the 40-1 there. I'm also going to put a quarter point myself. Well, I'm not even suggesting this. I'm just telling you that I actually had to back Martic at 100-1. Martic is off the back, has been to the quarterfinals of the French Open before. She made the semi-finals of Rome. Another person we had backed at 500-1 in that tournament and lost in 3 sets to Pliskova, of course. Just like. It's more out of principle. I think Martic is one of those players. She's there to be beaten, but if the draw were to open up, she's good enough to actually go through it. But at 100-1, it's an out of principle thing. I have to back her. So we move on to quarter four. We're flying through this. I hope that wasn't too much rambling. Quarter three, of course. Favorite here is Sabalenka at 9-4, Kvitova at 9-2, Serena Williams 7-1, Paula Badosa 8-1. Then you've got people like Kerber is 18-1. Now, the price that I kind of liked, even though her form hasn't been great, because this is a kind of a winnable quarter. Now, Sabalenka, if ever she's going to do it at a slam, this has got to be the one that she produces the goods. Because look, she really, Kvitova is a threat, of course, but Sabalenka is, she's the form player outside of the slams this year. There's no reason why she can't, even though you'd imagine that clay isn't, that she's not the best mover on clay, but like she has the power to hit through the courts. Maybe it gives her a little bit more time. She has big swings, so that kind of suits her in that way as well, on her ground strokes. But it's just one of those things that she just keeps bottling it. There's still like question marks about her mental strength, and she just keeps bottling it in these slam events. She couldn't get past Serena. Last year she bottled it in both the French Open and the US Open. So she just keeps bottling it in these big tournaments. Now there are people like Rybakina, even though she's not in great form. I did see her at 33-1. I had to have a little nibble at that. Serena's obviously looking at her draw here. She's got Bego in the first round, which is a potential banana skin. Maybe Roos in the second round, Collins or Kerber in the third round, Kvit in the fourth round, Sabalenka. So you can't be backing Serena on the clay really at this stage. But one of the persons that I kind of liked, if you want to have a little bit of a nibble at a long shot, is a very talented girl called Clara Tauson, the Danish girl. Who won an indoor event earlier on in the year. I remember we had Badosa backed, and she beat Badosa in the semi-final. I can't remember, was it in France or Budapest or something like that? I can't remember the full details about that, but she raced through that tournament just hammering everybody. And I don't think she even dropped a set. And she hasn't played incredible stuff since then. But the thing about it is, at 66-1, she's a really talented player, and just a lot of question marks over the players in this draw. Like Azarenka hasn't done great on clay, hasn't played much. Madison Keys has been out of form. Serena just hasn't produced the goods on clay in the last few years. It doesn't suit her. Just doesn't have the legs anymore for it. Kvitova as well can be a bit flaky. She had a run, I think, to the quarterfinals last year, if I remember correctly, or was it the fourth round? But she had an unbelievably easy draw, and it's just hard to know with Kvitova. And Sabalenka, it's obviously fair enough. Sabalenka is a decent favourite, but I just think if you're looking for somebody that that could the surprise packet of the tournament, I think Clara Towson at 66-1 with Paddy Power isn't a bad shout. And one of the main reasons it's still not a bad shout is because initially she was down to play Badosa in the first round, which would have been a very tough first round. But then Badosa got pushed. Badosa got moved in the draw, and now she's got a much easier first round draw in Gorgodze, the qualifier. So 66-1. I'm going to go half point on Clara Towson to win that quarter, and hope that she goes on a bit of a miracle run. So there's no one really else. Like Rybakina, I had an even smaller nibble on Rybakina at 33-1, but I don't love her either. I just think that 33 is maybe a little bit too big on her, and she's another person that looked like she was, progressing on to big things this time last year, or maybe a bit later on in the year last year. Of course, there was COVID this time last year, but hasn't quite kicked on. She's actually regressed, if anything, this year. So, but look, that's the way it is. And then quarter four we have Osaka, and is obviously quarter four. And initially I thought she had a great draw because Tig is obviously a tough clay quarter. Tig won, I think, Istanbul last year on clay. She's a good player. I remember she had a really tough battle with Fiona Ferro last year as well at the French Open. But Tig, then possibly, who would it be? Bogdan maybe second round. And look, if you got through those matches and worked your way into title, into contention, there's always a good chance there for her that she might actually find something, but she's never been comfortable on clay. But then she'd also have to play Badosa in the third round, and Badosa's a tough third round opponent, because Badosa's just been in unbelievably good form ever since. She couldn't win that really Mickey Mouse tournament, the indoor tournament. I think, if I'm right, I think it was either Hungary or France, somewhere in France. I can't even fully remember. And she was 33-1 in that tournament, so I'm still kind of sick from that. But yeah. Anyway, what was I going to say? Shouldn't be getting sidetracked like that. And then she maybe has a potential with this is Osaka. Maybe has a potential with Vondrousova in the fourth round, and then worst case scenario is Andreescu, Podoroska. Then you have people like Kudermetova, Anisimova. Like, there's a lot of tricky players in this fourth round, or in this fourth quarter. Too many questions. Osaka's the 3-1 favourite, but there's too many question marks over her. Andreescu is then 5-1. Kudermetova. Now, this is the beautiful thing, is that we got Kudermetova at 33-1 with Paddy Power earlier. I think I flagged it up on the Twitter page, so hopefully you got on that. So we got a half point in Kudermetova at 33-1 with Paddy Power. Even though I feel like she's better suited to fast surfaces, she did win. And was it Charleston earlier on in the year? I think it was Charleston that she won. She won Charleston, exactly. Charleston earlier on in the year. And yeah, flew through the field actually at Charleston, destroying kind of everyone. But I think she beat Kovinic in the final. But and Sloan, I think, was in the semi-final. So she's a good bet at 33-1. But it's a tough draw for Osaka. Initially, I thought she had 3 easy first rounds because her decided player that she was due to meet in the third round was Alison Risk, who's terrible on clay. But now that it's Badosa, there's certainly no value anymore in that. Vondrousova as a fourth round opponent. Look, we don't know if it's going to be Vondrousova. She was a finalist a couple of years back, but her form has not been good at all since then. However, we did back her at 66-1 for this quarter because it is a wide open quarter. Lots of question marks over Osaka, lots of question marks over Andreescu, and then it's anyone's game after that. And there's a lot of players here. So we did a lot of players here that we looked at, and we also tipped up Podoroska, last year's semi-finalist. I think she beat. On the way, she beat, of course, Svitolina to get to the semi-finals before she finally lost to, and then Krejcikova was another player she beat. She finally lost to Swiatek in the semi-finals quite comfortably, but she was 100-1 with Paddy Power to reach the semi-finals, or to win this quarter. So we also backed her. We put a half point on her to win to reach. So we went with 3 underdogs at prices that they really shouldn't have been. That's Kudermetova 33-1 half point, Vondrousova 66-1, just in case she manages to find her best game on the clay, because she is a quality clay court player. She's just so suited to the surface. Her drop shots when she's on form are just divine, and she was at the final a couple of years ago. So if she managed to work her way into the tournament, she could be very dangerous. And of course, Podoroska at 100-1 could go on another run again. She's had some decent wins. Of course, she bet Serena, I think, in Rome, lost in 3 to Petra Martic. I don't see any reason why she couldn't go on a bit of a run again. She's obviously full of confidence. And there are other top players in here, like Anisimova. If you wanted to back Anisimova, there's no decent price for Anisimova on the outright, and there's no decent on the quarter betting. That's, I think, the best price. You can get her at 16-1. Same with Kasatkina. No great prices on people like Bencic either. So, and then of course with Andreescu, she's always one of those people that you're better off just kind of keep watching her first, keeping an eye on her to see what she's like. In the first round or two. She's got a very tough first round against Zidansek, who nearly beat Muguruza last year. Zidansek, really great forehand, her game is perfectly suited to the play. Very tough first round match. So there's a lot of these players that there's just a lot of question marks. Badosa's, obviously the value on Badosa's gone because she's only 8-1 now to Yeah, what is the price for Badosa here? 1 second. Yeah, so Badosa is only what? Oh, actually, Badosa was in the wrong quarter here. So Badosa is only about 8-1. So just not great value on her either. So yeah, the three we went with were Vondrousova, Podoroska, Kudermetova. We've also done a few outrights on the exchange. We've backed people at massive prices, like the likes of Madison Keys. Even though she's in terrible form, she was available at like 280 to 1 on the exchange. So I had a little nibble on her. If you can get Anisimova, if you find Anisimova reaching into the kind of 130, 40, 150s, then I think she becomes backable. But the problem with her is she plays Kudermetova in the first round. But then again, it's a way to hedge your Kudermetova bet, you know. So that if you find a good, great outright price on Anisimova on the exchange, then it won't hurt you that much if she beats Kudermetova, or if Kudermetova loses the first round, you know. And that's the way it goes. If there were other big outright prices that I was looking at, there's not. There weren't really that many. I actually took on Brady. Brady went up as far as 260 or 270 as well. Now I don't think her game is particularly suited to play. She recently split with her coach, but just for such a big price. And like with the women's game, it's so open. So yeah, I'll if I come across any really big crazy prices on a big underdog, I will of course let you all know. But yeah, they're the bets for the women's draw. So in the men's, we only have one big quarter bet. Of course, we backed Casper Ruud at 40 to 1, but our big one that we're recommending is Tsitsipas 3 points to win his quarter, and to reach the semi-final. And then of course with the women's, we have Sloan in the first quarter at 8 to 1, Sloane Stephens. We have Mushkova at the first quarter 40 to 1. We also have in the second quarter, who did we go with? Kenin at 41 in the second quarter. There we have company in the house here, so if you can hear them, I'll be down to them shortly. And so next one is let me think here. Yeah, in the third quarter we went a half point in Towson at 66 to 1. And I think that's all we went with there. We also went with half point on Kudermetova 33s, Podoroska 100s, and Vondrousova at 66s in quarter 4. So let's finish with that there. And regarding our match bets, that's what we're going to push on to here now. Match bets. So who are we looking at in the match bets here at the moment? My first, I really didn't like the draw, as I said, and I didn't find many match bets. And then I liked the prices that the bookies were. They're getting sharper and sharper, it seems to me. And I think this is why I'm kind of looking forward to the grass, because there's so much clay court tennis that has been played before the Roland Garros. Is that there's an awful lot less unknowns. There's an awful lot less surprises. You know, like the books have seen all these players play plenty of clay court tennis by now, and so whatever unknowns are to them are kind of unknowns to us as well too. Like for example, the only prices that are kind of tempting are the ones where a certain player mightn't have played for a while or has been injured, and so there's question marks for both the bookies and the punter, and they're not the type of matches you want to get involved with. But anyway, we found a few. We'll see what we can get on with here. So the first one I'm going to suggest is Astra Sharma. I was quite surprised to see Astra Sharma is an underdog against Arina Bara from Romania. Now, Arina Bara reached the third round of the French Open last year after coming through qualifiers now, and she, I think she's I think she's coasting off that success a little bit. She beat a way out of form Donna Vekic in that tournament, and then Van Uytvanck retired injured against her, and then Kenin pretty handily pretty much hammered her in the third round. She's an average enough player. She hasn't done an awful lot since then. She did get through qualifying. She beat Burrage, Manella in 3 sets, and Fretch. None of those are world beaters. Sharma recorded her first French Open win in the first round last year as well against Blinkova. But I just think Sharma since then, Sharma has won a tournament. She won a clay court tournament, albeit on faster green clay in Charlestown. But she beat Osorio in the final, the Colombian player who was off the back of a title herself. I think it was in Bogota. She won her title, and then she beat Ons Jabeur in the final, who just still can't seem to win a final. So I think that would give Sharma great confidence. I do have a quote here from Sharma there where she talks about how how happy she is to get a wild card into the tournament, that she's playing good tennis, she's feeling good. And I was delighted to see that. I'm just really surprised that she's an underdog against Irina Bara. To be honest, Bara is just a typical clay court plugger, moves well, covers the court well, but Sharma's weakest shot is her backhand, and if you can manage to take time away from her off her backhand, and really be, you really need to be a type of player that's able to attack that backhand, and I think that's why maybe Clay can suit her a bit, because she moves well. She has an amazing forehand. She can really dominate off her forehand and off her forehand side, and hit a lot of winners off that side. And I don't think Bara has the weapons to really expose her backhand. Bara is just a solid player that doesn't make too many mistakes. And I think Sharma's had issues in the past with her nerves. And has choked away a lot of matches. I think she choked away a match badly at the Australian Open against Hibino. But the win that she had in Charlestown should give her confidence. Okay, and she has done well in clay in the past. And she's kind of remind me a little bit of Stosur, like a fellow Australian Stosur. Weak backhand, but serves pretty big, and it has that big forehand to back it up. And I think her forehand will be the weapon that makes the difference in that matchup. And obviously she will have gained confidence from winning in Charleston. So I just don't see why she should be underdog here. So I'm going to recommend 2 points on Astra Sharma to beat Irina Bara, who came to qualifying, of course. Other matches that I like, I also like Gracheva, if I can find my notes in Gracheva. Yeah, Gracheva is a young up-and-coming player, and she's evens. She's the underdog, surprisingly to me, against Arrubarrena. Arrubarrena came to qualifying. She had a fairly easy draw, though. She had Arcanada, Lochner. She just managed to scrape through against Lochner, whose favourite surface wouldn't be clay at all, in the second round in 3 sets. And then she had an easy, as easy against Carol Zhao in the third round of qualifying. And I just think Arrubarrena, it's a long time since Arrubarrena won a main draw match in the Slam, and I just think Gracheva is kind of a young up-and-comer who has actually done, who's actually showed up at these Slams in recent years. I think she beat Mladenovic and Badosa at the US Open last year, and then she ran Svitolina very close at the French last year. They were losing 7-6, 6-4. She took Kudermetova to 3 sets at the Australian Open in the second round. So so she has, and she's posted their recent wins on clay over the likes of Tossin, Tomova, Peterson, decent wins, and I just think Arrubarrena, she's I think sometimes when players come through qualifying, they can be overrated a bit. Now, there is a little bit of a question mark over Gracheva, the fact that recently in Strasbourg she had a poor run. She had a poor loss, I think, to Carol Burrell. But look, these are just at some stage, if you read too much into these things, of course it might mean something. It might mean that she could be carrying an injury. I looked to see, I searched the internet to see if there's any information about her carrying an injury. There doesn't seem to be, and I just think that she is. I just think she's a better player than Arrubarrena. Arrubarrena, of course, favorite surface is the dirt. She's done some damage over the years at Bogota, but she's still past her best, in my opinion. She also has the capability of choking in main draw matches. I've seen her do that plenty of times. I personally like Gracheva there in that match, and I'm going to tip up 2 points on Gracheva to beat Arrubarrena in the first round. So other matches that appeal to me is I'm still really surprised to see that Korda is only 4-7 to beat. So Korda is only 4-7 to beat. Who was it? Martinez. Martinez obviously is an up and coming player. Has posted some good wins on the clay this year. But Korda, I just really like the look of this Korda. That's Peter Korda's son, by the way, for those of you who don't know. He had a run to the fourth round of the French Open on his first try last year, and he handily beat Martinez on his way there, and now he's back in form again. He's after reaching the final of Parma. He's handily beat everybody. I think he beat Sonego, he's beaten Tommy Paul, really comfortably beating these players. And so I'm surprised that even though Martinez has, is a good clay court, he's a good up and coming player, he hasn't set the world alight. The fact that Korda is in great form, really looking good, moves so well, has great back and great forehand, and I think likes the big occasion and wants to be playing in the big tournaments. At 4-7, what I am going to do is I'm going to add him to Mertens as just to amp up the price. Mertens is 1-5, so 4-7 plus 1-5 will get you to about 4-5, or even a bit better. 4-5 as a price, and a little double between those two. Mertens to beat Storm Sanders. Storm Sanders came through qualifying really well, in fairness to her, so it's nice to see her playing some good tennis. But Mertens, I have a quote from her that she's been practicing really well. She's been focusing on her physicality, and she's all pumped up. And Mertens is just, as we've said in this podcast so far, she's so reliable at beating the players that she's supposed to be beaten. And so to have those two in a double at 4-7 or at 4-5, 2.5 points for me. Thank you very much. And so that's what I'm going to go for there. I am tempted by Bogdan over Cocciaretto. I'm sure I butchered that name, but I was actually disappointed to see that Bogdan was favourite there. I thought we might get her at least a pick and price. I think she was about 8-13. Other matches there's not too many. There's not too many that I have. I think actually Sonego Harris is a bit of a big price at 4-1 against Sonego. I think he can push Sonego in that match, and I think if you can get Harris at something like -6 or -7.5 games, you'll be doing very well, I think, because first of all, Harris he has beaten Dimitrov recently on clay in 3 sets. I don't see why he shouldn't be at least decent on clay, because look, he has a big serve first and foremost, which is a important thing to have when you're trying to cover handicaps. He also has a big forehand, and like sometimes that these players with big serves and big forehands. Even though maybe the advantage of having a big serve is stunted a little bit by the fact that you're on a slower surface. He also has time to run around and hit his forehand and to line up his shots a bit better, because his weakest shot is his backhand. But like, this is a guy who's played some good stuff, So yeah, as I said, he beat Dimitrov in Madrid, and then this year he's beaten Shapovalov, Nishioka, not sure, Dominic Thiem, Krajinovic. He beat Paparan in the Australian Open. So of course Sonego's had his great run, Rome beating Thiem and like Sonego and Rublev, and then obviously won in Calgary. But like, I just think that there's. I don't feel like it's going to be he's going to have it all his own way against Harris. So I'm happy to just put 1 point at evens at over 33.5 games in that match. I think Harris can certainly push a few of these, maybe win a set in a tie break. I think he can push Sonego, and I think I even remember Sonego, even though he'd had a great run in the French Open last year. He went 5 sets in his first round against who was it? 5 sets in his first round against Gomez, the qualifier, and I don't think he's one of these guys who necessarily will take care of business that all that like he's not the type of player to hammer players. I just think Harris is a quality player, and I don't see any reason why he can't be at least competitive. Of course, Tanega's in great form, so that's why I'm only going 1 point. But I just think that the 4-1 on Harris as well. Even though ultimately I think Tanega wins, but it's just I just think he can be competitive in that match. So Radu Albot as well at 5-1 to beat Delbonis. He's won the only match they've played between them on clay, which I think was in 2018 in France somewhere. But Albot generally is one of these players that is a bit flaky all through the year. Runs very hot and cold, but often produces his best tennis at the slams. And reached the third round of the Australian Open this year. Who did he beat? I can't remember who he bet. I think one of them was O'Connell, who actually had a shock win against. I can't remember who O'Connell. He had a shock win, but and he obviously beat Thompson at the French last year. I think he's beaten Sangren the year before. I don't think clay is Albert's best surface, but at 5-1 it seems a little bit big, even though Delbonis has been in good form. Delbonis might actually have a bit of there might be a bit of a fatigue factor after his great run in Belgrade this week. And also Delbonis doesn't have a great record in Grand Slams, and even especially on his favourite clay. And if it goes into a battle, I just don't see. I feel like maybe it's worth a quarter point or a half a point on Albot to beat Delbonis there. Because first of all, there's a fatigue factor, and Delbonis just doesn't have a great 5-set record, and obviously he lost that epic match against Londero last year. I think it went. Neither of them could hold serve for about 12, 14 games there in that last set. So it just seems a bit too big for me, so I'll have to go a half point there. I'm also looking. I didn't see the price yet, but I'm tempted to see what sort of price I'm going to get for Martyr against Krajinovic. Now Krajinovic runs a bit hot and cold. His form has been a bit flaky this year as well. He lost to Milojevic last year, a qualifier from last year in 4 sets. And Martyr has finally found a bit of form, and we know that Martyr has played, like he's just kind of been in the doldrums in recent years. But I see a quote from him saying that he's finally feels back. He absolutely destroyed the last 2 players he played, Milojevic himself, who's a good clay courter, and Alves in the final rounds of qualifying. And I just think that at an underdog price, I haven't seen it yet, it hasn't gone up yet, but he'll be one I'll be looking to back. We'll have to wait and see what the price is. But keep an eye out on Twitter if I flag that one up. Is there any other big prices here? We're actually almost done. I think Giron, I don't know how to pronounce the names here. Is what he's about 7-2 against Dimitrov. And I think Giron is a good player. He's beaten the likes of Montero and Nishioka and Andujar on clay this year. He obviously had that win against Haley's last year in his first round of play, first time in the playing of the French Open in the first round. So he has a French Open win behind him. Did he beat Berrettini this year at some stage? But I just think, and then of course he's just an improved player. He's an improving player. He's a player on the up. He took a set off Zverev at the Australian Open last year, this year actually, Australian Open, a very tight match. And Dimitrov has lost to the likes of Harris, Davidovich, Cuevas only recently, and I think his only wins on clay this year have been Shardy and Struff. So I think there might be a bit of value on the underdog here. Maybe if you can get 7-2 or 4-1, maybe go a half point on Giron, or maybe even go for the overs on that matchup, because I think Giron can definitely make that one competitive. Now, of course, Dimitrov doesn't play that well. I think clay is his weakest surface. I think he gets no purchase off that backhand. I think his backhand is exposed on the clay surface. Now he benefited from a great draw last year where he had Barrère and Martin, and then really tired Cabellis before who was it that took care of him pretty? I think it was Tsitsipas that took care of him very easily in the fourth round. And then the year before, even Tipsarevic pushed him to 5 sets. You know, an old man Tipsarevic who was traditionally a clay hitter. So I think Giron is someone to look for against Dimitrov as a big underdog there to cause some damage. So either whether you go for him the handicap or you go for him on the outright, he's something to look for. Is there anybody else? Kukushkin is 14-1 versus Davidovich. Now, Kukushkin has played terrible on clay, but this 14-1 just seems absolutely almost insane. I will say, keep an eye out for Kukushkin come the grass season, because I think they're making a bit of a mockery of him there. He's not that bad. Is there anybody else I'm looking at bets wise? Oh yeah, I have a little thing here. I also like Martin Fuchsovich. Martin Fuchsovich to cover the 6.5 handicap at 4-6 with Paddy Power against Gilles Simon. We have a similar bet with Shapovalov that came in with us last year. Last year against Gilles Simon, but Gilles Simon has been in pretty terrible form, it has to be said. He's lost to even on clay, like he lost to Martinez by 8 games in 2 sets. Like I think it was 6-4, 6-love, or 6-love, 6-4. He lost to Bedene by 7 recently. He lost to Herbert by 5, and that's all in 2-set matches, you know, on the clay. Clay's never been his best surface, but he's really, really been struggling. Like even he was struggling last year, and he's struggling this year even more. And maybe I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last French Open. Maybe he'll be able to find something. But I think Fuchsovich is a really quality player. Of course, Fuchsovich reached the 4th round last year. He beat Medvedev in that famous match. I think we flagged him up to beat Medvedev. He beat Montero and Ramos clay quarters in straight sets. You know, and obviously, of course, we saw him have the big win over Stan Wawrinka this year at the Australian Open. Beat Dimitrov at the US Open last year. So, like, we know he's a quality player, and. Yeah, like it's just the last time Simon was in the Grand Slam, he actually lost 6-1, 6-2, 6-1 to Stefanos Tsitsipas. He's just been really struggling. So I think they said 3 points on the 6.5 on Fuchsovich to beat Gilles Simon. I really like it. Chloe Paquette against Lynette. Lynette is capable of beating herself. Paquette playing in front of her home fans. It's just 92 seems like a big price on her there. I think the total games of the Fuseli catching off match might cover the overs. I'm just not sure how I feel about that yet. Another person that kind of Monfils versus Ramos over 37.5 games. I really think that's going to be a long match. I think Monfils has been struggling with his confidence a little bit recently. He lost in a final set tiebreak against Carbuelas. Buena just there this week, but his tennis is even though he's far from his best, and it's actually kind of sad to see the way Monfils' career has gone. He's been just so unlucky with injury as well. And you know, we talk about players when players that you're worried you're going to or you know, everyone's worried about when people like Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer retire, and of course the big three. You know, there probably will be a massive void that will be very hard to fill when they retire. But I just look at someone like Gael Monfils at the French Open, and what, you know, the atmosphere he's brought to the French Open over the years, and just so many of the classic matches. I remember there was one real classic match which he lost against Fognini many years ago, and actually I had a bet on him that day. But the atmosphere was absolutely electric, and just when he's on the back end of his career now, and it's just kind of he's been such a great entertainer, and he's so great for bringing just get the crowd involved and just being flamboyant. And yeah, it just would be really sad the day he retires. And even like, I'll even say someone like Gilles Simon as well, just you know, even how he's been so poor. It's just sad to see. He was also one of my favourite players. A lot of people find him boring, but I just love the way he moves. He's the most graceful mover I've ever seen on a tennis court. And yeah, and he's on the way out as too. All these players are kind of, I've grown up with, like the Verdascos and the Kohlschreibers, and it just feels like they're all going to be gone one by one. Yeah, it's just a short career. Tennis, they have a short career. So yeah, anyway, that was a side note. But Yeah, so but I do think Monfils. It's not like Ramos has been in great form. Obviously, he picked up a title this year, beating Nari in the final. I can't remember where it was. I apologise, but it was a kind of a maybe was it a 250 or 500 event? I think it was a 500 event. No, I think it was 250. Could be wrong, but anyway. And obviously he reached a final and a semi-final at the in the American or in the South American clay court. So he's been playing some very good tennis on the clay. But I also think that Monfils' tennis is there. It's like not at his very best, but it's there, and I'm pretty sure that he's good enough to take a set, but he's not good enough to win 3 sets in a row. And I'm sure at some stage it'll be a tiebreaker set in here as well. So for me, this is going over 4 sets at least, and I think just one of these sets is going to be a tiebreaker. So I think you have to go at 2 points at evens with Bet365 over 37.5 games with the Monfils Ramos match, because even though I'd say it's hard to know, it'll be great to see if Monfils can actually pull through in this one, but I just don't see this being a one-sided affair either way. Who else is there? The Dimitrov match is over 34.5 games at 4-5. I like that. I actually don't think a lot of people are just mad to back against Pair. But I think that he might be able to push it over 29.5 games, because with a bit of a crowd there, he's playing at the French Open. I just have this weird feeling. No, I'm not going to tip it up, but I just have this weird feeling he's still he still has incredible talent, and I have a feeling that there's life in the old dog yet. I'm not going to tip up anything, but I think that he might be able to push Ruud. Maybe even the 4 sets. We'll have to wait and see, but it's hard to know. I think we're nearly done. The only other one I wanted to do was I wanted to tip up a Sinner, Rublev, Barty and Badosa quadruple, because we always do one parlay, because I never do parlays in any other tournaments, but in a Grand Slam tournament you should always do. I feel like the best opportunity to do a parlay is at the Grand Slam tournament. So the one that I quite like is these players. Sinner, I just think he's going to be he's got just too much class for Herbert. Herbert actually pushed Zverev to 5 sets, I think, last year at the French Open, but it was more to do with Zverev not playing very well than Herbert playing well. Herbert actually does generally play well at the French, but I just think Sinner is, he's mentally strong, and I think he just has too much talent and too much firepower off both wings, and will. Although he mightn't like the net rushing style of Herbert, but I just think he's just too good. I fully expect him to win. Rublev, of course, Struff hasn't been in great form. Struff doesn't play his best tennis on clay, and Rublev has just been so reliable at the slams. So I put him, and he's just a higher quality player than Struff. Barty, has been quoted saying that she feels great. I totally, I fully expect her to beat Pera. Pera has actually played some decent stuff in the last few months, but just Barty's just a class above, and I'm surprised that she was only 1-7. And then Badosa has just been in incredible form and is just very hungry, and I don't see any let up from her, and I think she's just going to be too good for Lauren Davis. So having those, those short prices, I think they're the 4 solid ones to me. Another thing I haven't seen yet, but I'm looking at Otte, O-T-T-E. He's playing Zverev, and Zverev can be a bit of a slow starter. And Otte has barely, I think he only lost serve twice in the whole of qualifying. He's a big server. He's an average enough player, but just solid, very solid. Playing some great stuff in qualifying. Like hammered Delian. I think Delian was probably a bit tired from playing in the. He played a kind of 3.5 hour match the day before against Kapcic, and so I suppose I wouldn't read too much into that result. But he hammered everybody else at the. I remember him taking Berrettini to 4 sets. I think it was Berrettini 2 years ago. He's a big server. We know that that Zverev can sometimes start slow. We saw it against Giron last year. Now he didn't do it again. Novak, Denis Novak, who's pretty poor on clay, wasn't able to push him last year. But then Zverev had his kind of rough match, the next match against Herbert. So I think Otte is more than capable of pushing that match to the overs, and maybe I'd say possibly more likely to cover the handicap. Because he has a big serve, so he's not going to be easy to break, even though it is Zverev. And so I haven't seen the handicap yet, but I think if it's 7 or if it's 8.5 games, 7.5 games at kind of at a pick and price, I think that's what you should maybe have a 2.5 point bet on that. Finally, also Fiona Ferro against Liang, who's an Australian Open Juniors champion from 2018. I've seen Liang play once, and I remember thinking, this was last year, one of these qualifier matches. I think, geez, this girl really has talent, And I think she had a wrist injury that curtailed her progress over the last year or so. But she's someone to watch out for, and she absolutely hammered everyone in the qualifiers. She hammered Mohammed, and Harriet Dart was going great, and she gave Harriet Dart an awful beating. And and the other thing is, Ferro obviously has retired injured on the 23rd of April against Sorana Cîrstea in Istanbul, and hasn't played since. And Liang is 5-1 to win that match. So Ferro, first of all, has an injury doubt, and she's up against a player who has absolutely flew through qualifying, and is or at least if it's not an injury doubt regarding Ferro, at least she's lacking match practice. So at 5-1, I think it's worth. I might even just go 1 point and a little bit of a proper gamble on that, on Liang to beat Fiona Ferro at 5-1. I think I'm done there. I think that's it. Are there other bets? Not really. On the outrights, it's like I didn't really find that many outrights. It's like as I said, keep an eye out on my Twitter handle. If I come up with any other bets that I really like, because there's still some markets to come up, and if I come up on any other bets that I really like, I will post them on the website. And please, if you like the podcast, subscribe to the channel, share it with your tennis loving friends, share it with your sports loving friends. We're going to have Ronnie on for a brilliant European Championships preview next week, and it's just going to be exciting. Now, who do I think is going to win this one? It's hard ultimately once again to look past Nadal. Like, it's just such a boring choice, but it'll be interesting to see him play. Like Tsitsipas, I have a friend who has on Tsitsipas at 20-1. And I remember I saw the 20-1 myself, and I didn't go for it on the basis that, of course, it's such a big gamble, because you don't know if he's going to be on Nadal's side of the draw or not. But this is before he went on his big clay court run, and it's worked out great for him because Tsitsipas has such a great draw, of course. And so I'm kind of a bit jealous of my friend there, but I do think I can really see Tsitsipas in the final, and it looks to me like a Tsitsipas Nadal final, and I just hope that Tsitsipas is able to push him. Like, of course, Djokovic might have something to say about that. Maybe Dominic Thiem finally finds his best game again. That's all very interesting. It's fascinating because Nadal could finally become. This is a really brilliant chance to become the undisputed GOAT, and I actually think. Contrary to a lot of other people think that Djokovic is going to win loads more slams, I don't know. I mean, I think as these younger players start to improve, and Novak gets older on these faster surfaces, I don't think it's going to be easy for him to certainly to surpass 21 if Rafa wins this year. But then, if Djokovic managed to win the French Open, I think really he becomes massive favourite to become the GOAT. And in my opinion, I'm kind of slightly favouring Djokovic as the GOAT in general right now. If none of them were ever to win a slam again, I probably would claim that Djokovic is the GOAT. That might be a debate for another day if I ever do a Q&A or a mailbag or something like that. But if Nadal wins the French Open, I think that's it. Nadal is the GOAT. He's ahead of Federer. He's 3 ahead of Djokovic. It's just... And it's hard to see him being called from there. Regarding the women, it's just what's fascinating is to see if Swiatek can, like, there's a lot of very interesting stories with the women. Like, can Sabalenka finally pull it together at a slam, or is she going to choke again? Will Andreescu, like Andreescu's someone to look out for. She's in the 33s, all right, but she's someone to look out for regarding her game, and keep an eye out for her backing her outright. And I might post it myself if I feel like I'm looking at her game and it's really good and there's still a decent price available. Can Osaka finally pull her on together on the clay? Hard to know. This of course, Marty. Can she win her second French Open in a row? It's interesting. It's interesting, and I'm really looking forward to Wimbledon. I know, but it's going to be it's definitely going to be interesting, and I'm actually kind of happy that I don't have as much bets because I have a lot of other stuff I have to sort out the next few months. So hopefully I'll have more time to focus on Wimbledon. But happy with the bets I gave you there, folks. And if you have any questions, get in touch with me on Twitter. You can follow us on Mug Podcast on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel, share it with your WhatsApp groups, and we'll see you next week, or we'll see you next week when we're going to be talking with Ronnie about the European Championships. All the best and good luck with all your wagers.